What's your favorite historical war fact? Was it the Anglo-Zanzibar War that lasted a whopping 38 minutes? Was it when Australia lost a war against a force of barely cognizant flightless birds? Was it when a certain handicapable president allowed an attack to take place on the 7th of December 1941 to falsely lure the otherwise peace-loving American populace into war? The last one is a conspiracy, or is it? Either way, the history of warfare is filled to the brim with interesting events, technological breakthroughs, and geopolitical close calls. As Aspie, World War II dweebs will incessantly make you aware of as they screech about the Messerschmitt 262, the STG-44, and something about how Germany should have just produced more Panzer IVs. In truth, I didn't really care a whole lot about history and smokestacks in my younger days of actually going outside. I care about barbells, cats, and video games. And especially the latter is important, because the right video game will make you care about the right history. Literally. Hearts of Iron 4. HOI4 is a grand strategy game set in the World War II period of our real world, starting from 1936 and continuing until the game starts lagging too much and your rig self-deletes because the half-million population country of Uruguay is somehow fielding 50 army divisions. But there is something paradoxical, happening with the HOI4 gaming community. The game is ostensibly about World War II, you've got the spicy pre-war period, it features all the major powers, and recreates the basic, if not majorly simplified, geopolitical landscape of the era. But make no mistake, HOI4 is designed, marketed, sold, modded, played, and then sold another 100 times again on the back of its alternate history gameplay. Want to have the German Empire restore the Kaiser? Go for it. It's very fun and the flag is very cool. Ottoman Empire restored? Why not? I'm sure Ataturk would love it. World Conquest Sweden? Uninstall the game, uninstall your hard drive, and then uninstall yourself. Every single HOI4 DLC, and they are legion, does two things. First, it steals a mechanic from a popular mod and monetizes it. And second, it further expands the player's ability to engage with alternate history, such as making historically irrelevant countries like the Netherlands, Lithuania, and Italy actually significant in World War II. Yet despite, or most likely because of, this focus on what-if scenarios, alternate history, and Eastern European supremacy, thousands of players find themselves falling down the rabbit hole of real World War II history. You have actual Black Sun femboys reading and discussing actual military doctrines, posing for the Discord with Clausewitz in one hand, Achtung Panzer in the other, and raw dogging David Irving's entire collection with their third leg. Normal people, they stay well clear and stick to grilling, which leaves you and I to dive further. How does a game that lets you turn Luxembourg into a world-conquering superpower end up teaching people genuine history? Here's the first key to understanding this paradoxical phenomenon. You can't appreciate alternate history without understanding actual history. When you boot up Hearts of Iron 4 and decide you want to create a what if France survived scenario, you immediately run into a problem. Firstly, French people. Secondly, to make France survive, you need to understand why France fell. And to understand why France fell, you need to understand the Ardennes, France being stuck in Great War strategy and equipment thinking, and the opposing Blitzkrieg doctrine. The game doesn't hand you alternate history on a silver platter. It's paradox, you have to purchase it first. Then it hands you 1936 and all the possibilities from there on. And if you want to change history in France's favor, you need to understand the actual historical pressure points. Where did things go wrong? What were the contingencies? Why shouldn't glorious France own the entire Benelux and subjugate these cowardly lowland scum like in 1813? for their own protection, of course. Every successful alternate history player becomes, by necessity and enjoyment, an amateur YouTube historian. That's not a compliment, by the way. But to really appreciate your playthrough, you need to identify the divergence points, the moments where history could have plausibly gone differently, and that requires knowing what the actual timeline looked like. And yeah, you have to stretch your imagination a tiny bit when Lithuania annexes the entire Baltic and Visegrad region. But real history is chock full of strange incidents, such as when the glorious city empire of Liechtenstein joined the Austro-Prussian War with 80 men, saw no combat, and subsequently returned home with 81 men, joined by an additional man looking for work. Now, there is some historical debate regarding whether or not it was a liaison officer and whether it was an Austrian or an Italian. I lean towards it being an Austrian, since it's fairly inconceivable to imagine an Italian actively seeking employment. But I digress. Hearts of Iron 4's game mechanics encode historical realities. The game doesn't just tell you that Germany had a powerful military, it shows you through production, research trees, and national focuses. It demonstrates through supply mechanics and fuel why the invasion of the Soviet Union stalled. It illustrates through the AI religiously botching D-Day every single game why such an undertaking required years of preparation, and Eisenhower not being a clanker. When you try to execute your own version of Operation Barbarossa, a fitting name for monarchist Germany as well, you don't just click invade Soviet Union. You grapple with the same strategic questions the German high command faced. Do you drive for Moscow, Leningrad, or the oil fields of the Caucasus? How do you supply armies across vast distances with so few supply hubs? Is 10,000 close air support planes enough? As I mentioned, everything is hugely simplified in HOI4. Obviously, ultimately it's a video game, but the concrete factors draw direct parallels between the game and real-life history. Industrial capacity, technological development, geographic constraints, supply issues, strategic decision-making, supply issues. To play the game well, you need to understand these factors well. And understanding these factors means learning real history, or just spam meta divisions and paratroopers, but where's the fun in that? Tanks and airplanes, ignoring battleships like everyone else though, is one of the big backdoors into real history. It certainly was for me. Shout out Panzermuseum Münster. Big machines with big guns are cool, and of course HOI4 players want to understand what the real world equivalents were. Everything from armor penetration, armor thickness, Christie suspensions, and Porsche's esoteric tank designs. The game provides stats and a battlefield, but curious players don't stop there. They find themselves on Wikipedia, YouTube, or watching historical documentaries like Girls und Panzer to further embed and immerse themselves in World War II history, and forgive me for using this word, lore. This is where national focus trees in HOI4 deserve special attention. These are branching trees of political decisions that every country in HOI4 have, which serve as interactive timelines of what each corresponding nation was or could be trying to accomplish in the lead up to, during, and even after war. I have in a previous video compared national focuses to an RPG skill tree that allows you to shape your nation, much like how you would shape your role-playing character in exactly whatever image you desire. And national focus trees of course have the historical path, but obviously is much more focused on alternate history paths. The genius here is that even the alternate history paths make you aware of what actually happened. When you choose Rally the Wehrmacht or Revive the Kaiserreich focus, you are implicitly learning that historically domestic opposition to Hitler failed, and explicitly that the last emperor, Wilhelm II, was in fact still alive by 1936 and in exile. When you decide between the 4-year plan or ending MEFO and pegging, you are left to wonder, unless your brainstem has entirely rotted off of course, what the MEFO was, which is a breadcrumb trail leading directly into reading, or let's be honest, watching YouTube videos about economic rearmament policies of the Third Reich. You don't experience these focuses in a vacuum, but have to wonder as you lose hour upon days in HOI4. Why is this focus called what it's called? What's the Sudetenland? Who was von Neurath? What was the Prussian doctrine versus the Panzer doctrine developed by Hans von Seeckt and Heinz Guderian? Why can't I get a girlfriend? Likewise, HOI4's general and field marshal system gives individual historical figures mechanical bonuses and therefore gameplay purposes. A division led by Erwin Rommel performs differently than one led by a generic general with this goddamn generic portrait. Zhukov has traits that reflect his historical command style. These aren't just names, they are gameplay elements that leads players to think, wait, who is this Heinz Guderian fella, and why does he have such good tank bonuses? That question leads to reading about the actual father of Blitzkrieg, Heinz Guderian, and maybe even to early tactical breakthroughs by von Seeckt and Erich Ludendorff's stormtroopers, which of course leads to you dying alone, having never felt the touch of a woman. The game can't tell you everything about these figures and massively oversimplifies. It is, once again, a game, not a documentary.
It might have a bad belt system design, but its 88mm cannon is really powerful.
But it plants seeds of curiosity. You start recognizing names. You begin to understand that these names were real people who made real decisions based on real life events they experienced in the World War I, for instance. You develop an unhealthy obsession with Erwin Rommel and start quoting his memoir at your workplace. And once you learn of the generals, field marshals, and how their strategy looked and what material they had available operationally, you must of course learn the map. And oh, you will learn the map. Except Africa, of course, and the Balkans. But if you're a Europore like myself, just assume that anything south of your border is where the true Balkans begin. I'll ask you HOI4 fans and other map game enjoyers just how capable you were previous to losing an endless amount of hours and life potential in your favorite paradox poison of choice of placing Latvia on a map, Denmark on a map, Uruguay on a map. As you conduct campaigns, you learn geography through repetition, as in repetitively attritioning 250,000 men on the same fortified mountain province. You learn that the Maginot Line follows the Franco-German border. You discover that Gibraltar controls access to the Mediterranean. You understand why the Low Countries matter for invading France or invading Germany. You see why Japan covets the resource-rich territories of Southeast Asia. Provinces have both operational and economical value. This isn't just abstract geography, it's strategic geography, the kind that explains why battles and wars were fought where they were fought. Players internalize why certain territories are valuable, why some borders were defensible and others weren't, and how distance and terrain affected military operations. With that basic knowledge, alternate history questions naturally lead to investigating the real historical decision-making process. Usually why Alfie didn't just listen to his generals, produce more Wunderwaffen, and how you would have won World War II for Germany if you were in charge. This happens to have an actual professional term, counterfactual analysis. A dumb-ass nerd term. Why stick to counterfactual analysis when HOI4 allows you to engage with counterfactual simulation? HOI4 exactly exemplifies constructivist learning. You don't just passively memorize facts, you actively construct your understanding by making decisions, seeing consequences, weighing them against their real-life counterparts, and then save-scumming because the game is goddamn rigged, broken, and appalling. Historical simulation games occupy a middle ground between pure play, not that kind, and strict simulation. HOI4 provides dynamic, rule-based conflicts that provide playable models of historical events. Mostly. As I mentioned many times now, simplified of course, but this is to the game's favor, unless you like Gary Grigsby's War in the East 2, in which case, please teach me how to play Gary Grigsby's War in the East 2. Simplification streamlines learning rather than nullifying it. The only way for you to be an active participant in historical scenarios rather than a passive observer is to give you agency, and the only way for you, the player, to have agency in a geopolitical game like HOI4 is to give you power beyond what a country otherwise would have had. Of course, in real life, fixing economical issues weren't as easy as clicking a button, unless it's the kill all poor people button, but it demonstrates constraints historical actors faced at the time and why such constraints mattered. It lets you experiment with alternatives, albeit easy alternatives, but still remains a hands-on experience for both policy making in a tumultuous time as well as an operational strategy and tactics simulator. Paradoxically, HOI4 demonstrates that the best way to teach people about what actually happened might be to let them explore what might have happened instead if a Roman Empire obsessed Wehraboo was in charge of the German army. My prediction is more war crimes. The counterfactual illuminates the factual. The alternate constructivist timeline reveals the pressure points and contingencies of the real timeline. And a game about rewriting history turns out to be one of the best advertisements for learning the history that was actually written. Also, cross-dressing radicals with anime Ernst Röhm profile pictures, but you take the good with the bad, and geography test scores have got to be soaring.
Thank you. Now watch this drive.
Alright, that was a video. Thank you very much for making it this far. Comment down below about war history or HOI4. I enjoy both equally. Like for the algorithm, subscribe for more cromulent gaming video essays, reviews, and discussions, and check out my free Patreon video ranting about Jurassic World or my other equally passable videos on my channel or in the sidebar. Have fun!